and welcome to another episode of How to Be a Great Player. Don't worry, there's no screaming and shouting and ranting from me this week. What I want to talk about is something that perhaps you do or do not do. Do you prep before a game? The game master is busy having an apoplectic fit in the background trying to work out what he's going to be running for you this particular session. But what have you been doing in terms of your homework? Have you done anything in order to prepare for tonight's session? If the answer is, well, I'm a player, I show up with my character sheet and that's it, then I'm afraid your answer is possibly incorrect and you may be missing out on a great way of ensuring that you are regarded as a great player. So whenever you are about to enter into a session, whether it's your first session or whether it's a game that's been running for years, the following things may help you to improve your play and ultimately improve the experience that you have in the game. And they don't necessarily need to take very long. Literally on your drive to the venue or 10-15 minutes beforehand whilst everyone is busy settling in or arriving. You can make these notes in your head or on paper and use them in the session. So the very first thing is you should review your notes. Take a few moments to look back and say, oh, I remember there was this plot that we didn't cover. It doesn't have anything to do now with the story that we're in, but maybe I should mention it. Maybe we should look at it as exploring it in the session if we manage to finish whatever quest it is that we're on. By reviewing your notes, it helps you to kind of bring you into the game a little bit. It helps to focus your mind on the world that your character inhabits. It also allows you to look at stuff and go, hey, there was that person who promised to do X, Y, and Z for us. We're in the town. So before my GM has to try and give me a clue as to what my story is going to be for the night, I can go and start my own investigation following up on this lead. By reviewing your notes, you can also look at other players' characters and go, well, I made a note that she was looking for X. Maybe tonight's a great opportunity for my character to go up to her character and ask about what it is that they were looking for. Maybe that can start the beginning of a story. So by reviewing your notes, it allows you to start to engage with your GM and with your fellow players on new stories that could emerge. This means that they're going to be looking to you as a almost source of entertainment. Your GM will be sitting back going, oh, what a wonderful player. Look at this person bringing back stories, bringing back clues and hints that I've dropped earlier in different sessions, and they're now using them. So review your notes. Review your story. So often we have characters and we have players who've created these wonderful backstories, and they talk about them when they're introducing their character, and they sit down with the GM and they talk to the GM about their history, and 5 sessions in, what history? The GM says, you find a small box with a crest on it that's got a snake as its symbol. And you go, oh, cool, how much is it worth? Can I sell it? Can I open it? Has it got something inside it? This is because you've forgotten the history that you wrote. And I have literally had players whom told me their story. I made notes, and before the session I was running for them, I went, oh, this person's got a vendetta with that type of family. And I decided now was the time to explore it. I introduced the family, and the player didn't react. They had forgotten what they had written in their own backstory. So take a few moments to review your backstory. Think about certain things that you've written there. Maybe the GM doesn't introduce them in this particular session, but you could introduce it in this particular session. You could say, I know we're here at the inn, but the king has given us leave to take a few weeks of vacation time. I want to go and explore X in my story. It will make your character feel a lot more real than the others, because now your character has their own desires and wants, and history is starting to come alive and starting to mean something rather than just a colorful story that everyone has now forgotten. So review your own story. Now, I'm not a big one on skills and PowerPoints and values and that kind of thing, but you should review those on a regular basis and you should understand every single one of them. At no point should you look up from your character sheet going, I don't understand why I've got 22% under the drive skill. You should know why you've got 22%. If you're one of those people who are not necessarily au fait with the rule system and you're just playing along because that's the system that everyone chose, you should make the time to read up on that rule system. How can you influence your own story? How can you get the most out of your game if you don't know how it works? And let me tell you, almost guaranteed, somebody at the table will love to explain to you exactly how it works. You don't need to know every nuance and every little divisible addition or multiplication, modification to your dice rolls, but you do need to understand where the values of your character came from. Theoretically, you should have been building a character based on your character's story rather than on numerical values to begin with. So the values should support your story. They shouldn't be a surprise to you. It's really just a case of sitting down with your character sheet and familiarizing yourself with it and saying, well, this is this value, this is this value. And that brings me to my next point. If you have some kind of power, so maybe you're playing D&D 4th edition, or maybe you're playing the new Fantasy Flight from Star Wars, you should understand what every single power you can do does. At no point should you be turning to the Game Master going, I don't know how this works exactly. Read over it a couple times, and if you don't understand it, ask somebody. It will make your experience better. People around the table might be explaining to you how it works, but you've now pulled yourself out of the story and you're now trying to figure out how it works. If you took 10 minutes before the game, you could have done it and the game would carry on flowing. And if it doesn't make sense, try and understand it until it does. If it still doesn't, well, then perhaps you should see if you can play an easier system, or if you can try and find somebody else to explain it to you until eventually it sticks in. The game will only be that much more enjoyable if you understand the basic mechanics of how it works and can quite easily just flip off what the power does. I've had lots of players who cannot memorize 57 spells and every little nuance about that spell. So they either copy it out by hand, which is a very laborious but perhaps a great way of learning the system, or they photocopy those pages and they have them with them on hand. So they're not paging through books trying to find this, that, and the next thing. So review your powers and try and understand how they work mechanically, as well as how can you describe them thematically. Simply because you have the capacity to fire a disruptor pistol or that you can drive a pink Cadillac, think of ways in which you can describe it. If you say, oh, I want to drive, I jump in the car and I start driving. How do you drive? Is your character a cautious driver? Are they constantly checking all of their mirrors? Are they simply a casual driver? They sit back and they just see what happens. Try and look at the skills and the powers that your character has and think of them in terms of how would you describe them to somebody who doesn't know anything about the mechanics. How would you describe how your character sneaks? Are they the over stereotyped kind of sneak? Are they more casual? Do they kind of wear shades? Do they dress down when they're sneaking? How do they use those foreign languages? Do they speak them well, or are they very bad at them? The percentage and the value, your number of pips that you have in the skill, the pluses or minuses that you might have, should be an indicator to you as to how you can then present them to the rest of the gaming group. If you have very low values, well, you should try and figure out how best to describe it. Not by saying, hey guys, I've got low values in this language, so I probably don't speak it well. Rather, mispronounce words. Rather, act out that language not good, understand it bad, think bulldozer right word for salad, unknown. If you do that, well, then everyone immediately knows you haven't got a clue how to speak the language. Isn't that a much more engaging experience? For you, isn't that a much more interesting way of playing rather than saying, yeah, I have +2 in that language, so I roll. Look, I can speak it. Rather work with the numbers to help tell a better story, and you'll enjoy the experience more, I'm sure. Once you've looked at all of that kind of stuff, and you've looked at how do you make your values turn into storytelling rather than into simply number crunching, there are a few fundamentals. Make sure that you arrive with a pen, a pencil, a whole bunch of paper, an eraser or two, plus other things. Pack your dice. I've got lots of people who have a bag, and in that bag is all their role-playing stuff, their character sheets, pens and pencils, erasers, and that kind of thing. And where does the bag live? In their car, because then there's no ways that they can forget it on game night or day or afternoon or whatever it is that you're doing. So a little bit of prep from that perspective. And then finally, for those of you that really don't want to be that dick at the table, if you don't understand the reference, watch last week's video. Tell people that might want to contact you, listen, I'm going into a meeting for the next 4 hours. If it's urgent, send me a SMS, or, burn down the house and send a smoke signal. Stand at the window and look strange. Whatever the case might be, but let people know you're not available. That way you won't be sitting there wondering if your phone should or should not be ringing every 3 minutes. So a little bit of prep there can go a long way. And finally, as a parting thought, bring a few snacks that you know your GM likes. It goes a long way if your GM is a happy, well-fed GM, I'm just saying. Anyway, until next time, hit that like, subscribe button, share us with your mates, and happy playing.